is where we're going to be focused, and there's a couple different sections here that we'll be studying this morning. Get over there this morning. And the first we'll talk about is laying up your treasures in heaven. And the second is do not be anxious. And boy, that second one is a loaded word for nowadays. Like I told you earlier, there's a lot of anxious times we're in, just everything we deal with. I mean, we got lots of things going on in the world, and this is not much more timely to talk about not being anxious through the words of Christ. All right. Again, this is a very evergreen passage. It's very relevant to us. It was relevant to the people he was speaking to back then, but it's super relevant to us. It's almost like Jesus knew that he'd be preaching and these words would cover many generations, and that's what they do. And as we'll see, there's a lot of information in here for us to take and to apply to our life. As we read about this, I want you to think a little bit about the priorities we have in our life, in your life, and how that shapes kind of who we are and how we think. Because I think there's a lot of things in here that Jesus talks about that shape how we are, and how those priorities that we have feed into some of the anxieties we have, and some of the problems we have, and some of the things that we deal with on a daily basis. It's very important here to understand the context. Jesus is preaching, obviously these words reach the entire world, but he's kind of honing in on a few things with this sermon. One, and then the biggest piece he's talking to is he's talking to his disciples. And he's trying to mold them to carry on the word and establish the church that we know today that we're a part of. So it's important to understand that context, because God also wants us to be his disciples, right? He had a lot of followers, but what Jesus was trying to really make was disciples. So what is the difference? To talk about for a second, what is the difference in a follower and a disciple? Is there a difference? Yeah, I think there's a difference in a follower and a disciple.
Yeah.
I think so. What would you say, what's a couple characteristics that differentiate a follower and a disciple?
Well, you don't even say they're a follower.
Yeah.
Something.
Sure.
Yeah, a disciple's out there doing the work.
Yeah. Very active. Being a disciple is sort of a verb, right? It's an action verb. At least in my opinion, that's what it is. So I asked, just out of curiosity, I asked old ChatGPT, I said, what's the difference in it's like, I want to see what the secular world says. And I got to say, Chat was pretty on point with this. So this is what it said. I thought this was interesting. A follower generally, they didn't say it 3 times fast. A follower generally admires and supports a leader or cause from a distance, often for benefits or popularity, while a disciple is a dedicated student or apprentice who deeply learns, internalizes, and strives to become like their teacher, committing to the way of life and teachings even through hardship. The key difference lies in the depth of commitment, transformation, and active integration of the teacher's lifestyles, movements, and agreement to embody what they teach.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I thought there's a little bit of hint of like biblical overtone to that with old Chat there. So I was kind of impressed with that. I mean, you could insert Jesus into any of that with teaching, and that's pretty much what it hits on it pretty well. So I thought for once the old secular world of ChatGPT was pretty on point there. So thought that was interesting. So thinking about that as a kind of a context here too of trying to teach his followers to become disciples in this, because I think that also applies to us. So let's start. I'm going to do it a couple sections at a time. Let's start with laying up our treasures in heaven, which covers verses 19 through 24. So if somebody's got that, let's read it, and then we'll kind of talk about what it is and what it means for us. So somebody's got verses 19 through 24. Let's start there.
I'll read it, but before I do, I think it's important. You look at the last instruction that Jesus gave, and he didn't say go gain a bunch of followers.
Nope.
He said go make disciples. And that's the difference.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
All right. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body, so then if your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light that is in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Pretty straightforward there. When we look at verse 19, do not store up treasures for yourself on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. Pretty straightforward here. Don't store up your treasures on earth. But why? Why shouldn't we store up our treasures on earth? Verse tells us, right?
Doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything. In the grand scheme of things, even if they bury you with your favorite shotgun or your favorite golf club or your favorite whatever, it's just going to lay in the ground with you. It's not going anywhere. You ever heard that old joke about the woman that said the rich man died and he loved his money, and his last command of his wife was, whatever you do, I want you to go get all my money out of the bank, bury it with me. I want it to go with me. She said, okay, all right, well, I can do that. So, of course, they buried the guy, and they do all that, and, all her friends and family are like, man, what are you going to do now? You don't have any money, you don't have anything, you sent it all with him, it's in the ground, what are you going to do? She goes, oh, don't worry about it, honey, I don't think he's ever going to be able to cash that check, so. Another dad joke, I'm on a roll this morning.
Pretty good.
But the reality is, it doesn't do you any good, right? None of it does you any good. As a matter of fact, even Jesus says, look, the things here on earth are going to destroy your treasures here on earth. And it's interesting just why he talks about the moth that come to destroy, but what was very valuable to them at this time? Clothing, right? Linen. That was, and the more expensive the linen, the more status you had. So it was very important. Again, the earthly things, the rust to destroy, anything made out of metals, the thieves are going to break in. I mean, it's just all the things in the earth that can destroy anything you build up. So what are these what is God saying? In other words, these material possessions are what? They're only temporary, right? There's nothing in them that's valuable for you past this life. So that's what he's really emphasizing in verse 19. Don't store up a bunch of stuff that's not going to do you a lick of good. It's in the end, it doesn't matter. Verse 20, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves don't break in and steal. On the contrary, Jesus tells him, don't store it up on earth, store it up in heaven. Because what happens if you store your treasures in heaven? What happens to them?
They're eternal.
Yeah, they're eternal. Nothing happens to them, right? They're there. They're going to stay there. But let's talk about, and something I've never really dove deep into when I thought about this, what are treasures? What are our treasures in heaven? What is that? It's easy to read and say, oh, that sounds like good. Let's do that. Let's store up our treasures in heaven. But what are those treasures? Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it for a minute. There's no right or wrong answer here. The reality is, we really don't know. I mean, we got ideas of what it is. I've always thought of it as spiritual treasures, right? Eternity, time with God, seeing the Father, meeting Jesus. All those things are, to me, I've always thought of them as spiritual treasures. But is that all it is? Is it spiritual things that are laid up in heaven? I don't know. Let's talk about it. What do you think? What do you think those? Can they be physical? Are they only spiritual? Are they both? What do you think about when you think about your gifts or your treasures that are laid up in heaven?
One thing I think about that Steve talks about a lot is, when Grandma dies and we said that she's going to now be an angel watching over us, but we don't know, was Grandma saved?
Yeah, and also she won't be an angel. So
Yes,
that's
but I'm saying, he really leans into the fact of did we talk about salvation? Did we bring people to Christ? And the more that we do that, and we're, people that are really important to us, say we do have those conversations, say they do get saved. To me, that's also a treasure of knowing that we're going to be together in heaven, and they're going to have that eternal life too.
And that gets into what you're talking about. So there's the Lamb's Book of Life, which your name is written in once you're saved. There's also the Book of Deeds, right? The things you do, the people you bring to Christ. And that'll be read before you too. I mean, if you're saved, you're in that Lamb's Book of Life. But there is a Book of Deeds that tells what you've done too. That's the things that you've done and the people you've affected and the people that you've brought into the kingdom. Which tells me there is a treasure system in heaven. There is things that'll be and we'll get into it a little bit. Well, I won't spoil that. We'll get to it here in just a second. But things that Jesus directly talks about treasures in heaven for certain people, and how significant they'll be. We'll get to that here in a second. We do know this. Before we continue discussing, I want to read you this. Ephesians 6:8 says this, and this is dealing with good deeds. Knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or is free. So in other words, we do good deeds, we'll receive back. Rewards for perseverance under persecution. Luke chapter 6 talks about this. Blessed are you when those people that hate you, and they exclude you, and revile you, and spurn you, and call your name evil, account to the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day, and leap for joy. For behold, your reward is great in heaven, for so their fathers did to the prophets. So again, that talks about if you persevere, your rewards are great in heaven. Another one, we show compassion. Luke chapter 14 talks about this. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just. Again, if you're giving, if you're a compassionate person, there's some sort of reward system, right? It'll be repaid at the resurrection of the just. And perhaps the most difficult of these is to understand is treating our enemies kindly. Luke chapter 6 says this in verse 35, but love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is the kind to the ungrateful and the evil. So we know, we've established here through these 4 or 5 verses here that there is reward and there is treasures in heaven for how we are here on earth. So again, what does that look like? What do you think that is?
I think the Bible's clear. There's a classification system,
Yep.
and I'm going to say this. I don't want to offend anybody, but not everybody's going to be equal when we get to heaven. I think that it's clear based on the Book of Deeds. If that was the case, the Book of Deeds wouldn't exist. Like there's going to be folks who, but does that mean your mansion's larger? Because then you get back into the materialistic aspect of things, and
Right.
I think Jesus is pretty clear that materialism is
Not
pointless.
Not it.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the mystery of heaven that we find out when we get there, and I think that's the point, honestly, because if they said, "Hey, look, you're going to be the fill in the blank, some reward," then I think that would be a motivating factor.
Yeah.
Because how do we react? We react to positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, right?
Yeah.
If we don't know, then we're doing it for the right reasons.
Yep.
We don't know what that reward looks like.
Yep. So based on what you just said about, and that gets into a real deep theological discussion about, it's always been classified as the degrees of heaven. Well, if there's degrees of heaven, is there degrees of hell? Is there, in other words, is there different statuses of both? It's a whole nother discussion. We ain't got time for that today, and I'm being recorded, so we're not putting that up there. Yeah.
I kind of want to go down that road.
Yeah.
I was like, that's why I came.
It's a good road for sure, and we'll get there at some point. Sounds like a good Wednesday night Grace University discussion. So there you go.
But theologically, just to make it clear though,
Yeah.
theologically, we want to make sure that, because it's hard, because your works don't save you.
Right.
And so we're talking about in addition to salvation,
Right.
What that looks
Your
like.
treasures. That's what we're talking about. What are those treasures? Are they? And I think let's pause on that for a second and read this. Somebody go. This is sort of a sidebar, but to your point, Luke chapter 25 verses 14 through 30. Somebody read that real quick. Get in there, Jessica. I believe in you. I know you got it.
What did you say?
Luke 25, 14 through 30.
Do you not pay attention to his lesson?
Yeah, come on. Good grief.
Luke 25.
Yeah.
You mean like 24?
24. It might be 24. Let me see what it is.
That was the joke.
Yeah, say hi, guys. Let me make sure I'm getting in the right spot. Hang on. No, y'all don't have Luke 25 in y'all's books? Well, listen. It's because I'm more blessed. I got
What is treasure?
may give you the wrong thing. Yeah, I think it is. Anyways,
Okay, it was good.
hang on, I'll tell you what it is. We're gonna read it because it is perfect to what Ryan said. I must have had a typo here. Please hold.
This is so funny down
Another
there.
dad
Yeah.
joke down there.
I don't know where I was looking at. Anyways, let me paraphrase it. Everybody knows the parable of the tenants. The landowner gives the tenant, find it wherever it's at, right? I had a major typo here. But anyways, the owner is leaving and gives one of his servants five tenants, whatever that quantity of that is, I don't know. Gives another one tenant, I think, or three tenants, and the other one tenant. I'm shooting off the cuff here, but I think that's right. But anyways, and he says, go and take these and do good with them, or, paraphrasing fairly strongly here, but
Luke 20.
Luke 20, thank you, typo. Go over there, see if you can find it. Let me not get it all wrong here. It is about Is it 14 through 30? Do I have that part right? I got nothing right.
29,
What is it?
20 verse 9.
Okay, read it.
He went on to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard, rented it to some farmers, and went away for a long time. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants so they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent another servant, but that one also they beat and treated shamefully and sent away empty-handed. He sent still a third, and they wounded him and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I will send my son, whom I love, perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they talked the matter over. This is the heir, they said. Let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When the people heard this, they said, may this never be. Jesus looked directly at them and asked, then what is the meaning of that which is written? The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but he on whom it falls will be crushed. The teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately because they knew he had spoken this parable against them, but they were afraid of the people.
Good.
Is that the one you want?
Not exactly, but it's
Okay,
good.
it
Yeah,
was
that was a good
parable
one.
of
Yeah.
tenants.
Well, yeah, the one I was talking to referred to basically, in other words, the one that had the 5 tenants took and doubled it and worked and made that double. The one that had 3 tenants did the same thing, went, worked, doubled that. The one that had the 1 tenant went, hit it, didn't do anything with it, sat on it, and at the end of it, the owner came back. He praised the one that had the 5 tenants because he doubled it. He praised the one that had the 3 tenants because he doubled it. And the last one that did nothing with it, he scolded and threw out into the field and was to never be seen again. Because the point of that is the one that had the 5 and the 3, think about it, the harvest of the people. The one that had the 5 and the 3 went out and doubled it. Where was it at?
Luke 19.
19. There you go. See, that's what I meant. Was it not 14 through 30? Is that the right verses?
No.
Yeah, good grief. I don't know. Yeah. Anywho, read Luke chapter 25. It's good. But the point is those that took and went and worked and pulled more in, they received a greater reward, right? They were given more. The one that did nothing with what they had, they were thrown out, basically into the lake of fire. So it's very much a story about taking what God's given you, multiplying it, taking those treasures He's given you, sharing that, pulling people into heaven. So that's the point that we're making here, is there are treasures in heaven, and there are things that will be given based on how we are and how we do and what we do with what God's given us here. So I think that's important to understand that there is a very, very much a treasure system in heaven.
If you didn't know you were going to get paid, would you go to work tomorrow?
No.
I think that's the point. Like
Yeah.
that's we don't know what that looks like. So the test there, I believe, is we know we're going to get paid. Or at least we hope we're going to get paid. So we go to work tomorrow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's the point, that we don't know what those rewards are. So
Yeah.
the test is in our faith.
Yep. Agree. And nothing more says, here's to your point where I think there are for lack of a better term, levels of the situation. Again, salvation is the only way through heaven. But I do believe there's a system where there are some treasures greater than others, and this is why. And I'm pretty sure I've got this right. Matthew 19, 27 through 30 says this. Then Peter responded to him, "See, we have left everything and followed you. So what will be there for us?" Verse 28, Jesus said to them. So this said that Jesus is telling them all about the things and the rewards that will be for people. So in typical Peter fashion, he says, well, I got a little question. What about us? And it's sort of, you can almost see this kind of as like maybe a little egotistical from Peter, or be like, are you serious, man? I mean, just chill out. But it is a legitimate question. And Jesus, when he answers it, has no ill will or intention in that. So I think it was literally a conversation between a student and his teacher of like, well, and I think it was, think of it more like this. It's not Peter being egotistical, but he's hearing all these things for these people that are going to be treasures, and Peter's mind goes, oh my goodness, wait a minute. If there's, what about us that if a light went off of like, man, as hard as this life has been for us, and we followed you, what does that mean for us in heaven? A light bulb went off for Peter thinking, oh man, there's more to this life than, there's more to eternity than I can ever imagine. Peter was always good about, for his faults, he was always good about recognizing things instantly. Who was the first to recognize the Lord was the Lord? Peter. He's the first one to admit that he was God. It's like, wait a minute, you are God. But Peter also recognizes here, like, wait a minute, there are greater treasures in eternity, and the more we suffer here and the more we struggle here, it seems like the greater the treasures are. So that light went off in Peter's mind when he asked this. He said, and Jesus said, truly I tell you, in the renewal of all things, which is, we know what that is, that's the end of time, that's the new earth, new heaven, new earth. When the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or fields because of my name will receive 100 times more and will inherit eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last shall be first. What's that sound like? I mean, he literally gives, it'll be 100 times more and eternal life. We got the eternal life part established, right? But he's saying for those who leave and do all these things, you'll receive 100 times more and will inherit eternal life. I mean, that pretty much sums it up right there, right? If you do the work of the Lord, your reward's going to be greater, right? And what does he say? Who are the 12 that are going to sit by Jesus on the glorious throne and judge the 12 thrones? Who are those 12? There happened to be 12 tribes of Israel, and there happened to be 12 what? Disciples. He's telling me, he said, you're going to sit on the throne, and you're going to judge one of the 12 tribes. So, if the 12 disciples who dropped everything to follow Jesus are going to be sitting on the throne ruling over things, are there greater treasures in heaven? Is there levels of and to me, and again, the most pertinent, important gifts are the spiritual ones. But I think there'll be things that material things I think will be a part of it too. I don't think it'll be the emphasis, but I think because if they're going to sit on the throne and rule over, they're ruling over kingdoms that are going to have material possessions. There's going to be wealth with that. So I think it's both. I think in a sense in heaven there's both spiritual, material, and all kind of gifts that come with that. I think it's going to be ruling over a kingdom. They'll rule over the 12. They'll judge the 12 tribes. I think that is a part of how the system works in heaven, at least from what I gather from these verses. Does anybody else think differently? Got other input on that? Again, the most important and key doctrinal thing here is the salvation and getting to heaven. But we're discussing what is that? What does it look like? What do the treasures in heaven look like? And I think that's part of it. I think, again, when it says, those who follow me will receive 100 times more, think there's something to that. Deep thought over there.
No. Just, for whatever reason, that Titanic came to mind. You remember how Leonardo DiCaprio, he got to be on the ship, right?
Yeah.
But he had the bad accommodations and the
Right.
bad food and all the other folks. Like that
Yeah.
that analogy came to mind. Like, well, maybe that's it. Maybe like we won't get us a window view, right?
Right.
Or if-
Yeah.
if
You
for those
get
of
a
us
you get a
that
cab in cabin.
Interior
Yeah.
cabin.
You're like you're there.
Yeah.
Well, that was always a joke. This old guy that when I was a kid, I used to go to church, and they would have. Remember, we had a whole Bible class about this. And he goes, well, and at the end of it, he had the greatest line I'll never forget. He's like, well, I reckon all this might be true, but hey, if I get a shack on the hillside, as long as I'm in the right zip code, that's all that matters. And it is. It truly is. But there is a point to like the work we do here for the Lord and the people we try to bring into the kingdom. There is a great reward for that. And Jesus, this is the red letters. Jesus is saying that. He's telling them that there will be a great reward. And we just hope the door is actually big enough for 2 people to float on. So we don't just have to drown in with your Titanic.
Way to tie this.
Yeah, way to tie that together. Verse 21. For wherever your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This verse right here sort of flips what human conventional wisdom is. For your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We often think about putting our efforts and our money and our time into things we love, right? It's easy for us to do that. If you like golf, it's easy to put time and money into it. A lot of money if you like golf. If you like fishing, same thing. You put your efforts into it, you can spend a lot of money on it. But what Jesus is saying here, don't focus on that, putting your efforts into that. Focus on where you put those efforts. Not what, but where. Put those efforts into heavenly things, and all the other stuff takes care of it. So it's kind of flipping it on conventional wisdom. Don't worry about putting your efforts into the things that are here. Put your focus on where those efforts are at. He's talking about those treasures in heaven. Verse 22, the eye, the lamp of the body, is your eye. If your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, and your whole body will be full of darkness. So if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? And again, this is part of where I think that it's so evergreen what Jesus is teaching here. What is the core meaning of this verse? What is he saying here in layman's terms? Whatever you take in with your eyes is what your soul is going to be, right? What's the saying? Your eyes are the soul, or the window to your soul. And that's what Jesus is saying here. So whatever you take in is going to be what's on the inside. Has there ever been a more pertinent time for that message that Jesus is giving than right now? I mean, you think about it. You're carrying this around in your pocket, and you can access anything, good, bad, in between. Computer, anything. Like I said, you got artificial intelligence now that'll give you and answer anything for you. So the point being is there has never been a more pertinent time for us to be attentive to the fact of what we're taking in, because it reflects inside our soul and shapes who we are, and shapes what we talked about earlier, the things that make us anxious and the things that form how we think and how we perceive things. So we understand that. But let's talk about for a minute, like in real world application, how do we ensure we take in the good and block out the bad? Like, how do we literally, when I talk about any deep scriptural thing here, like how do we do that on a practical basis? How do you combat taking in the bad through your eyes? One, I think it's extreme self-discipline, right? You have to train yourself to be disciplined, and that is extreme. I mean, that's 1A, B, and C probably of this discussion is being extremely disciplined on what you take in. And not only just the content that you take in, how guilty of can you be of just sitting here mindlessly scrolling at night, and you got everything going on in the world around you with your family and things that could be more useful. You could be in the Word of God, but we're sitting here scrolling like, oh, that's cool. Well, that's cool. That's cool. And none of it is useful information, right? None of it. I mean, I'm keeping up with the transfer portal. That's important right now. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, you think about it, you're sitting there just taking in mindless information and that's not doing anything, and you're shutting out what you could be taking in good information, being in the Word. You're shutting out your family, you're shutting out your spouse, you're shutting out things that could be useful to you and help you be better and help your soul be a reflection of better. So one is that discipline. How do we do that? How do you do that? I don't know, I'm asking for a friend here. You need practical ways. I mean, surely.
Sit it down and walk away.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of
Delete your
it.
apps.
Yeah,
What'd you say?
Delete your apps.
Delete your apps.
yeah.
Yeah, set some kind of structure for
For
yourself.
screen
Yeah.
time. When they do screen
Yes.
time.
I thought about going back to flip phone. But then I thought about texting and having to hit like 4 times to get an S. That's tough. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
You going back to technology?
Yeah, I might give me a BlackBerry. I don't know if I had a BlackBerry, I'd do it.
I love it.
Yeah, I love the BlackBerry. I'd go back right now. But yeah, I mean that's part of it is just the discipline of being able to put it down, what you intake. I mean, funny enough, deleting a lot of stuff is probably the best way to start. There's like social media is I think intentions are kind of good and it's kind of fun at first. Even like back in the Facebook days, it was kind of fun to catch up with people you hadn't seen. But there's nothing on Facebook of value anymore. Nothing. I mean, everything's fake on there now. It's all fake. Everything's generated. It's all. I mean, like 70,000 celebrities have died this year, but in reality, it's only like 10 of them have. But they're all, at some point they've all died or something's happened to them. And it's just all these fake stories, and there's just nothing good with it anymore, I don't think. And it's become such a tool of the enemy to use those things to plant those little seeds in us. I think, funny enough, it's probably the best start is to delete some of that stuff and get rid of it. But man, it sure is hard to do. You feel like you get disconnected, and then all of a sudden, I did delete Twitter, and I've not been a TikTok guy. I haven't done that. But as soon as I deleted Twitter, like 57 of my friends will send me clips and be like, "Oh, you got to see this," and I'm like, "Well, it looks interesting," but when you click on it, it wants you to sign up for Twitter. So it's kind of like, man, you feel. As soon as you try to do something like that stuff starts happening, you feel left out. You're like, well, let me just start over. Let me get another Twitter account. Or in my instance, football season starts, and I want to stay up on the stories. I count on Michelle now to stay up and keep me updated on the happenings. But it is things like that you feel like all of a sudden you delete that and you're like, oh man, I'm left out. I don't know what's going on in society. And it's easy to get stuck in that. But again, it comes back to the discipline. And I think another key part of it is trying to replace those times of like, let me just lay here in bed and scroll this for 20 minutes for no reason. Replace that with something else, reading the Word, or having a discussion with your spouse, or things like that. So I think that's all. And a word that Steve hit on today was accountability. It's having an accountability partner in that. Whether that's your spouse or, well, that's probably most of our choices is having our spouse, and not ending in divorce. So when your spouse calls you out for your phone usage, but again, I think those are just practical things that we can try to do to make changes in 2020. That's something I'm trying to do is make changes. And this it just so happens this is kind of our first study of the year was talking about things that your eyes take in, because I think it's very pertinent to what we're dealing with nowadays. Verse 24, no one can serve two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or he would be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Jesus clearly lays out here that you can't love money and serve the Lord. Does this mean that wealthy people don't love the Lord, or they won't be able to serve the Lord, or they're just doomed because they're wealthy and they'll never have that relationship with the Lord? Is that what this means?
No.
Mm-mm. It all depends on how that money's used, right, and what they've been blessed with. Listen, there's a lot of wealthy people that are some of the best people in the world that give money and give things, their money and their time beyond what anybody would ever believe. And those are usually the best people, because they don't want the advertisement with it. They just want to do it, give what the Lord has blessed them with. There's a lot of wealthy people that do that. Now, it is harder for wealthy people to walk the path, right? And Jesus even says in Matthew 19:23-24 says, Jesus said to the disciples, "Truly I tell you, it would be harder for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven." What does that verse mean? I mean, can a camel pass through the eye of a needle? No. But there's a lot of scholarly debate. This doesn't necessarily mean this was actually the eye of a needle as we know it, like you sew a needle. There was a thing that was called the eye of the needle. So when a city would, all these cities had walls, and when during the daytime the gates were open, there were guards, things could pass through. Well, at night they would close those gates. They would have smaller doors and little gates off to the side where people could enter after those hours of the large gate. And a lot of the cities called those the eye of the needle. You'd have to go through this small gate. So if you had camels or any kind of herd animals and you were trying to enter this town, a camel, for instance, a lot of times they would have to unpack everything off the camel, clear the camel, and then squeeze the camel through this door and work to get the camel through the door. So that's more the illustration here. I think that what Jesus was intending is it's easier for that camel to go through that small door in the eye of a needle. Is it impossible? No. But what is one of the key things they had to do? They had to unpack the camel, right? They had to take everything off of it. So I think that's kind of what he's getting at here. If you're a wealthy person, yeah, sure, it's easier for that camel to pass through the eye of a needle. It's not impossible for you to go to heaven if you're a wealthy person. That's crazy talk. But it is harder for you because what happens with, and this doesn't, we're not even talking about the insanely wealthy. We could be talking about most people that are blessed in this country. We're wealthy beyond, our middle class is wealthy beyond what the world is wealthy. So it's not, we're not necessarily talking about the Bill Gates and those people of the world. We're talking about just probably your middle class American this would apply to, because we're wealthy beyond what most people in the world are. So what he's saying is you got to unpack some of that stuff that makes you wealthy. You got to give. You can't hoard it all. You got to be very careful with how you use that wealth. And I believe that's what Jesus was getting at with these last couple of verses here in this passage. Anybody got anything to add to that?
I think another point to that is when you're making the point that it's harder for wealthy folks, and not just financial wealth. When you've got your health, and when you've got shelter, and you've got all those things, and you've got food, and you've got money in the bank, what do we do with God then?
Yeah.
Do we just spend all day praising Him for us having it? It's that spare tire syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. It's that where we think we've done it, and we've got everything we need, and so I think that's where, to your point, where it's harder for wealthy folks when they have those needs met. You got to be intentional about fitting God into that equation and acknowledging where that came from.
Yeah, because you get that pat on the back going real quick. And, boy, I've done good in my job. I've handled my finances, man. I've done good. I took that bonus and paid off that car. Man, look how good I've done. And it's you get to be that I syndrome real quick, and none of that is given to the Lord and paid back to the Lord. You're exactly right. And it is not only money. It's a good point of the things like your health and, just stability in general. And your kids are not causing a whole lot of problems. And that's things that I ought to be thankful to the Lord for sure.